in the prescribed fire world, you've got, say, the more fire world type stuff, which you see out west, fancy, shiny metal, expensive rigs, all that kind of stuff. When we're working on private lands and we're trying to be practical, it's not all necessary, right? Like when we're doing prescribed fire, we need to get water from point A to point B in a really reliable fashion. Keyword being reliable. So there's different ways of doing that. So for me, working with the Nature Conservancy, we've kind of got a little more higher end stuff, if you want to call it that. Like we run gas pumps and gas engines, and then we'll have also some electric pumps on ours as well. But we use ours for both prescribed fire and at times doing some wildfire work, which requires some different equipment. But I think when you guys are thinking at home and trying to get in the prescribed fire world, when you go in a magazine and look and see how much that stuff costs, it's pretty spendy stuff. It's all great depending on how you're going to use it. If you're just going to do spring fire on some grass or pasture or whatever every so often, maybe that's not quite what you need or what you want. Depending on how much you're going to use it and what you need it for. But you could take some of the designs you see and then make it fit what and how you want to use it for. So there are some real pros to this unit. Some things I really liked a lot. One thing is I really like the low profile of it enough, or quite a bit, that there's baffles inside it. So if you're going any kind of hills and those sorts of things, the baffles will really keep all that water from sloshing really hard on you. And having a lower profile tank helps keep your center of gravity down. Two kind of important factors when you're dealing with topography, right? For folks that aren't necessarily dealing with that, with maybe say CRP burning or flat ground burning, you could get away with, let's say, a little bit of a higher profile tank. But maybe the better thing for you and what your uses are at home is a custom type of a unit. So I took what we bought here, took the pros and cons, and a couple years ago we went to a metal fabricator up in Watertown, and they built us a tank, an aluminum tank, that really fit the needs of what we were using and how we were doing it to kind of my specs. Like, the one thing I hate the most is you go buy something brand new, spend a bunch of money on it, and the first thing you do is go cut holes in it and drill holes in it to customize it to what you want it to be. Thinking ahead and going and maybe talking to your fabricator and working through those steps on the front end helps prevent some of that stuff. And the cost differences of something out of a magazine versus going to our local fabricator, I think we were a third of the price. It really saved us quite a bit of money doing it locally, doing what we want. Now these pumps, there's name brand stuff and there's off brands. I've seen some of the farm stores start carrying these sorts of essentially it's just a little trash pump type deal. So it's not that you can't find it. It doesn't have to be quote unquote fire. It's just how far you go and look for it. There's two different kinds of pumps. There's a diaphragm pump and then there's a centrifugal pump. So a centrifugal pump, like on that white tank there, it's an electric. Essentially all you do is flip the switch and it primes itself right on the spot. This sort of a unit with a gas pump actually takes a hand primer, and you have to suck the water out of the tank and into the pump. And that's what gives you the ability to turn it on and get it cranking. If there's no water inside the pump head here, it won't run. The engine will run, it just won't move any water. Both of them have their pros and cons. So these centrifugal pumps are designed to be low pressure, high volume. Those more diaphragm pumps are designed to have high pressure, low volume. And there's a difference as to how you kind of plumb things and how the pumps perform. Personally, I've really grown fond of those electric pumps. The ones, say, you get with your sprayers at the farm stores, the pumps that come with those units, don't move enough water. But what you can do is buy that setup and order a pump that has a higher volume. I think it's got to be 5 or 6 gallons per minute. And that starts to put out enough volume to kind of use it for doing the fire work. Those usually run another $100, $150. The advantages are, and you'll hear it once you guys get going this afternoon, running a gas engine, it can be loud and it's hard to hear the radio and makes communication tough. When you have the electric one, it only runs when the pressure drops below whatever the switch is inside the pump, and it's pretty quiet. It's not near as loud as this. For the prescribed fire work that we're doing here, you'll notice that most of these pumps, like I said, it's a lot of volume for low pressure. That's only running at about 10 pounds of pressure through the actual pump. And that's more than enough to create the wet line that you guys will be lighting and working off of. When this is running and it's moving water, essentially this is your valve. And this valve contains this little shower nozzle right here. Because what we're trying to do is point this at the kind of the crotch of the tire in the ground. So when the water's coming out of here, your tire is actually squishing it into the ground. And then you have wet ground, wet vegetation on the top of it. And then that's essentially what's going to hold your fire. So say for now we're going to burn this stuff where everybody's kind of standing. So you'd have the person put on your ATV driving ahead of you, and essentially you've got the person behind with your torch lighting on the inside of that wet stuff. And what happens is your fire will start to like bump into the wet stuff and go out, and then it slowly backs, into your unit. And it's really important to work with your operator of your ATV to kind of follow that. Because if your wet line starts to go dry, or say you run out of water in your tank, essentially you have nothing stopping your fire, and that's when fire starts to creep into your fire breaks and bad things happen. To prime, when I was talking about sucking the water through the pump, essentially this is what you have to use as a hand primer. The other part, if you get into working prescribed fire at home, is the fire extinguisher. Right, we've got a gas engine, we've got drip torches, we've got torch fuel. There's a lot of flammable pieces of the puzzle. We have machines that probably have grass and stuff underneath them after working all the time. A fire extinguisher is really valuable to deal with any kind of issues on this. A trick of the trade with your fire extinguishers, so every fire extinguisher you get, especially the small ones, comes with like the red tab. Pop the tab out, push the button, and you're spraying the powder stuff. What happens when you're working and not paying attention too much, these tabs will vibrate, out. And then when you're not paying attention and your foot hits the button, you fire your fire extinguisher. I've seen this happen a handful of times. So heed the warning from personal experience to just use like a key pin and drill a little hole, and then your safety for your fire extinguisher can't pop out. I guess moving down the line here, so this is kind of, I want to say the more higher end type of a fire unit. But there's really no difference and no problems working with something like this, right? Like the whole point is to get water from point A to point B and have it in a reliable fashion. This is, farm store type stuff. In a barrel you could get off rummage pages anymore, pretty cheap. Farm store electric pump, like we talked about before, it's just got a switch and then it'll kick on and start working. Something like this could be just as handy, and I suppose you probably have something in your shelter belt or whatever at home to come up with something. The same thing with that kind of a unit. We're getting water from point A to point B. How you do it with the shape of the tanks, sizes of tanks, it really doesn't matter. You're just trying to get it there and know it's in reliable, has a reliable motor or pump getting it there. This unit over here with the green tank, this is a little different. It's a low volume, high pressure tank. So When I said my pump over there pumps about 20 pounds per square inch, I think this one's set to go, I think, 160 pounds on this one. So my little, prescribed fire unit there works, and we can put water out, from close by. You can really reach out and touch something if you want to squirt water. I think 30, 40.
Touch that tree from here.
Yeah.
Gallons? A minute?
The tank? Oh, no, he's got 160 pounds of pressure.
How many gallons is he pumping out then?
I'd have to look at the nozzle.
Tank, and I don't know how fast he's putting it out.
Yeah, I can't remember what the nozzle was. I think it was like a 20 or 30 gallon a minute nozzle.
Okay.
So that's when it comes back to some of your nozzles, depending on what you want to do. You could get nozzles that'll put out a ton of volume, no time flat. But if you do that, you don't have any water left in your tank. So there really is kind of a happy medium for what you want, what you're trying to do, and then finding the right tools for the job.
Yeah, this is for the cedar country, rough hills, where they don't really want to be close to the fire, and you can kind of squirt things out.
Reach out and touch it, yep.
So that's why they like the distance.
And like I said, that's a lot of pressure with not a lot of volume. So when he's got that going for doing wet lining and stuff, he's not just wetting it down, they're blasting their wet line in. You could go get these little inline water filters. And if you can plumb it up into whatever system you have, they have commercial bars. Essentially, it's a bar of soap that you're putting in there, and it'll make that water stay wetter longer. It stays out of the tank. If it goes into your tank and recircs in there, it gets to be a big soapy kind of a mess. It's not the end of the world, but when you have it past your recirc and it's on the other side, it stays out of the tank and it keeps your tank and stuff cleaner.
Where do you get those bars from?
There's a company out of Maryland that sells them. Forestry Supplier, I think, sells them. Or you could go to like old school bars of soap if you have time and you like to whittle away. A lot of people do that too in the wintertime, if you want to try that. Like the ivory soap is softer, so it doesn't last quite as long. You could use the other bars that are harder, and that'll go a little bit longer. But on the commercial side, we did a test run in our parking lot or in our driveway at the shop, and we had over twice the water that had the soap sticks in them stayed wet almost twice as long as the no water. So that could be a real big advantage when you're doing grass fires and working off of soft fire breaks.